Hello, everyone. I'm the Disc Golf Guy, and this is my 2021 Board of Director candidate interview. Today, joining me is Will McKaskle. Will, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Terry. How are you tonight?
I'm doing really well also. So we've got some starter questions for you. Ultimately, I think there's 6 or 7 that have been put together, not by myself, but I'm here to help facilitate this. And we're going to start you off super easy with how long have you been a PDGA member and what drove you to the sport?
Okay. Summer of 2013, my best friend's mother got sick, and I flew out to be with him while she was ill. And she ended up passing really quickly after I got there. And I had heard of disc golf before and kind of passed it off. Didn't really sound cool enough for me in my school. So I was around disc sports a lot growing up. But that particular week, after my friend's mom passed, all he wanted to do was play disc golf. And so one of his good friends had a private course out at his ranch outside of Sholo, Arizona. And so I played my first round there. He let me use a couple discs, and one I remember was a blowfly and a nuke. And I knew those were cool discs. So as soon as I came back, that Wednesday I played the league that Pete Ulibarri still runs or used to run at Sholo City Park. Came back, started buying discs, got an end of a starter set at Dick's, bought a nuke and a blowfly, and went out to Crockett Park in Brentwood, just south of Nashville, and started learning how to play. And then I signed up for the PDGA in October of that year. I knew immediately that I was going to be in disc golf for the long haul. Obviously, the game itself attracted me immediately, but the more I got plugged in and the more people I got to know, and the way the community functions and how close-knit and how much of a family atmosphere it is among disc golfers, those were all things that immediately just made me feel at home. And okay. It wasn't long before I wanted to support the organization and take it as far as I could.
Well, so 2013, and it sounds like you were immediately hooked and then almost immediately became a member. So I'm going to jump in as we have some more detailed questions for you. And I'm going to read them almost verbatim here so everyone has the same ones. And it says, one of the 2 main elements for the PDGA mission is to develop a disc golf into a globally recognized competitive sport and recreational activity. What does that mean to you? And how would you contribute as a member to the board towards this objective?
What that means to me, the first thing it says to me is I've noticed that there's a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion about how much is invested into the pro level of disc golf, and how a lot of times it's the amateur field or fields that are not seeing the front end of that investment that are kind of supplying the resources to put into that. And I think that's, obviously investing in the pro level of the sport is instrumental in growing it. But some of the people that I learned the most from here in Nashville, the pioneers of the local community here, they've always seemed just really, really hesitant to get behind the growth. And some of them, one of them in particular said to me exactly, he's like, I love what you do, but I hate what you do. And I always kind of wondered what that was about. And I was kind of critical of it for a long time. But I think what it is that they're afraid that it's going to, at some point, cease to be available to all people at the same level that it always has been. And through running the Music City Club here in Nashville, that's something I've always been really, really passionate about and committed to, is making sure that disc golf is always all things for all people. That if you want to be involved in it casually with your close friends and it's just a recreational activity, there should be a structure available to provide you with opportunities to participate, weeklies. We've got a full calendar of weekly events here in Nashville at one course or another. And then the club, I feel like, or any membership organization, the PDGA, should provide a ladder to all levels of disc golf. So a member can follow a pathway to wherever they want to exist within the sport. And there should be a pathway provided to them that is accessible. So I think that's really what it means to me, is that when we invest in the top level of the sport, we should also be making investments in the less represented groups within the community.
Well, and I feel like you almost answer then question 2. I mean, I feel like some of this might carry over and expand if you need to, but it says the other element of the PDGA mission is to sustain the growth of the organization, membership, and disc golf. What does that mean to you, and how would you contribute to that?
Well, so that's a really good question. Right now, growth we don't really have much of a problem with. that's something that we were always really, really kind of keyed in on, was growing the sport. That was the hashtag that was first trending in the sport, and everybody fell in line and did just that. And now I think we're starting to really kind of see in a tangible way a lot of the growing pains, a lot of the complications and hurdles that come along with a sudden growth spurt. And I think that the ways that our processes and our procedures can be adjusted are beginning to reveal themselves. And I know me and the people that I have conversations with in leadership of different organizations are all having those conversations. But that's really the key, is identifying those adjustments that can be made in things like the competition manual and the tour standards that can be adjusted to allow for the people on the ground level, the tournament directors, the promoters, to really continue to provide the safest and most positive experiences for the base that we can.
Okay. Now, these are going to be a little bit quicker, but it says the current priorities for the 2023 PDGA strategic plan include the following areas. So maybe touch on, well, I'll read them quickly for you, and then you can tell us how you would prioritize them. So again, 2023 PDGA strategic plan include youth and education, increased support for local clubs, enhancing PDGA leagues, membership levels and benefits, sustainability, as in safe courses, minimizing environmental impacts, maintaining equipment standards, and then marketing and media. So I know that's a lot, and I'm happy to repeat anything for you, but is there anything when you hear all of those strategic plans, all of those components of it, is there any way you prioritize some of those things?
Absolutely. I think the first and foremost is youth and education.
Okay.
I think that the EDGE program has done a phenomenal job. Jay and Des are amazing, and all the things that they've done for schools. That's really where I think that our attention now needs to be focused, is on the youth. And I think with all the attention that has been generated recently towards diversity within the sport and diversifying the membership base, I think that the way you do that is you just get in at the ground level and make it accessible to people of all backgrounds as kids. And that's something that I've invested in heavily here in Nashville during my time with the club. We've got several, at this point, probably close to a dozen club members, local disc golfers that are also school teachers and have implemented some kind of a disc golf club or program at their school for their students. And I just really think that is the first place that we have to go, because you see the people that are the best at this sport, they're the ones that started playing the earliest and the youngest. So that's definitely first for me. I definitely think, I forget how it was phrased there, but investing in clubs, local organizations, providing education and resources to local and regional tournament directors and promoters. I think right now, and this is all stuff that the PDGA is aware of, and a lot of it that is already being worked toward. But I think that you've got your bread and butter events for the PDGA are your C tiers, and up to this point, it's basically anybody can run one, and everybody has to pass the same test, the same kind of test every year or every 3 years to be certified. And it's the same test for the players as the TDs. And I just think that the vetting process is step one. I think that one, provide education and resources, and then maybe restructure the certification process for actual tournament directors so that it's a little bit more comprehensive on that end and to that end. And then also coming up with a new way to incentivize or compensate tournament directors, especially good ones. I think that there should definitely be an easier, more comprehensive way to utilize the PDGA website or an app of some kind to see every tournament director's record, what they've done, what events have they run, what's the feedback on those. I know, you can get to it like many things on the PDGA website. There's a way to get there, but I know to find out information on events that a person has run, you have to go through events and then advanced search settings, search by the tournament director's name. I think that it would be more beneficial if there was like a curated package of information about tournaments that the person has run that is linked to maybe directly through their player profile on the website. I think that in and of itself could be a huge incentive for people that are running tournaments because they've got an easy, accessible way that they can get to and share their resume. And we're at a point now where there's so many tournaments and they're filling up so quick. I think players deserve to know what they're signing up for and what the integrity and character is of the person that they're entrusting their money to.
Okay.
So those are definitely the two top things, I think, is youth and education and local organizations.
Okay. And thank you for recapping, because the next question is, what skills and experiences would you bring to the board to help further those priorities?
Whew, man, much like starting to play disc golf in 2013 and then signing up for the PDGA that same year, it wasn't long until I was in, honestly, probably over my head. 2014, I ran my first event. It was a trilogy challenge at a private course. It was a fundraiser. We raised money to buy some gear for a couple local kids. And then I was hooked on that. That was the only thing I had experienced that even came close to the first time I threw a disc and it actually flew like I meant for it to. It was that same kind of euphoria or elation just to see people, because I think in the field of 25 people, I had the bare minimum players, and there was like 6 to 10 of them were playing disc golf for the first time. And so I was seeing people fall in love with the sport the same way I had recently fallen in love with it. And I was kind of facilitating the opportunity that they were having to do that. And there was nothing like that feeling. So 2015, ran my first PDGA event, ran 1 or 2 more that same year. And then after 2016, at the end of 2016, I decided to run for a spot on the Music City Disc Golf Club Board of Directors. See you, Jim. Thank you guys for coming and helping. Sorry, we're wrapping up a clinic at a school here. But yeah, so I after joining the board of directors, I spent 1 year as the information officer. The next year I was the operations officer or vice president. Then for the last 2 years leading up to 2021, I was the executive officer or the president. And I've run a weekly league for the last 6 years. And in that time since then, I've run C tiers, B tiers, A tiers. The Music City Open, our flagship event, obviously has been selected as the national tour finale. I've run a host of unsanctioned tournaments. We've got a really successful bag tag series that is basically a tour with a point system attached that travels around the Nashville area. So I think one of the big pieces of experience or skills that I would bring to the table is the fact that I'm intimately familiar with events at all levels and of all shapes and sizes. I've been there and done that. And the Music City Open has been a sizable A tier for the last couple of years. And starting 2 to 3 years ago, I invited Sean Sinclair in to come and be a part of the Music City Open. Obviously, he's the PDGA events manager, and he and I have become really close friends. So I've been able to kind of pick his brain and tap into the wealth of knowledge that he carries around in his brain. And that's been instrumental as well. But there's not been many. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff. Thanks, Robert. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I haven't seen. I don't want to fool myself or be naive in thinking that I've seen everything or I know it all. But when you talk about just really hair-raising weather delays, people not showing up last second, people just trying to get into fights, the worst things that you imagine when you think about running a tournament, I've seen a lot of that. And
Sure.
It's made me better prepared to go into any given situation. So that, coupled with the fact that I've run so many sanctioned events and events of different sizes, I think has really given me a unique opportunity to experiment and push and find out more about what works and what doesn't. And that's always been our process here is, I wanted to not just continue on in the same routine. Okay. Yeah. Oh, 1 second. I didn't want to continue on the same old habits and processes, just assuming that they worked because they always had. I always wanted to try new stuff, add new bells and whistles, make the events and the experience that we provide as special as possible. So I'm familiar with the players. I know what players in different divisions are looking for and what's valuable to them. I'm familiar with, events of different sizes. I've traveled out to Emporia to be a part of the Dynamic Disc Open, Last One Open for the last couple of years. So I think in terms of the events that I've been a part of, that definitely makes me a well-rounded candidate. The other thing is that I've just always been pretty gifted at putting myself in other people's shoes. And I think that that's an invaluable skill for really any occupation or pursuit. And it's something that I think has been lost to the sands of time, or it seems to have been in the greater society at large. But, that's always, I'm always trying to think about what the player is looking for, whether it's, trying to walk that tightrope and find that balance between players packs, good players packs, amateur payout, doing all that stuff. And you always have the vocal minority. And did you already sign me out, Robert? Thanks, buddy. But yeah, just to continue to try new things. I've also, because I've put myself in so many different extreme situations running events, I think
I would touch on your last skill here or experience that you'd bring to help further those priorities.
So my last skill, I've become really, really, well, I don't know what, in comparatively talking to you, I'm not that experienced in communications and media, but I have spent a pretty significant portion of my life studying the written word, doing journalism in school. I won a bunch of writing awards. I wanted to be a writer for a long time when I was younger. And over the years of working with Music City Disc Golf, it was clear to me right away that media was going to be instrumental and key in growing our organization and growing the community here in Nashville, in embellishing and pushing the level of the events that we were offering. You had to get really, really more, I guess, dynamic, to pardon the pun, but in how you approach people and how you get information out there. I was showing up at tournaments the first year or so that I was on the board, and I've posted all the information for this event on 7 Facebook pages, 2 Instagram profiles, the club website, 3 live videos, and then we started the podcast 3 years ago. So I think that's another thing that I'll bring to the table, is that I can kind of anticipate where things are going to fall through the cracks. And I think that we've kind of noticed over the last couple of years, there's almost like a gap or a disparity kind of growing between the membership of the PDGA and the organization itself. It seems like a lot of people just aren't really familiar with what the PDGA is actually doing and how the money's being used and what kind of new and innovative initiatives are being implemented. And because I see comments on Facebook all the time, people asking like, why am I signing up for the PDGA? What am I getting out of it? A magazine that I don't read? And I think if we could do a better job utilizing the huge scope of new technology that's available to us, there have been a couple different iterations of the PDGA app and several different levels of functionality to it. But I think that that's a missed opportunity there, is to have an app that is just really, really well interfaced and fully functional, that you can share multimedia content. I think the app could be used to do the certification process for tournament directors and for players that are trying to play in elite series or majors. The website is great, and I know that there's just an unimaginable amount of information on it. But I think a lot of it just kind of gets overlooked sometimes. I think people's attention spans, they just don't think to take 15, 20 minutes to kind of dig through the website and look for the information that is pertinent to what they're discussing or something. So I think that there's a lot that can be done there just through a knowledge of communication and media and that kind of thing, that you can figure out which information is most pertinent, make it readily available and accessible to the membership. So that's something else I think I can help with. Doing the podcast and having the YouTube channel has really kind of stepped up my game in that area.
I feel like you've maybe almost touched on the next question, which reads as: there's a burgeoning professional scene that attracts eyeballs, but the vast majority of our membership is amateurs. Where do you think the organization's balance between the two should be? And I feel like you kind of touched on that earlier, so maybe give that a quick clarification.
Yeah, I think that right now, what we're noticing is, I mentioned earlier just how many events are popping up. It's every weekend. There's multiple events, no matter where you live. If you're in a major city or if you're in a more rural area, you're within driving distance of multiple tournaments. And so, that also, trying to pick and choose what you're going to play and what events you're going to be a part of, that necessitates a change in strategy, I think. And obviously the structure of the sport is built in a way where the amateurs do provide, like I said before, a lot of the resources that are used to invest in the growth of the sport at the top level. And I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. I think that we can just do a better job of making sure everybody feels like they're being regarded equally, and that their investment or their participation in the sport and in the organization is valued equally and invested in. And so I think one thing that can kind of level out a lot of this is there's a huge opportunity right now to start, as we get into equipping and educating our tournament directors, start encouraging and incentivizing certain types of events that will help the state of disc golf at large. Such as right now, I think one thing that could be huge is a lot more encouragement of field-specific events, age protected in both directions, juniors and masters, women's events, AM-only events, maybe pro and advanced level only events. And I think that would also allow us to use our courses that we have available to us in a little bit more of a diverse way, because that's also another big area of conversation. People always saying, do we need these open golf courses? Should they play more wooded technical golf? And I think that certain kinds of courses and certain kinds of situations are more appropriate for certain fields. So I think that's one thing we could do.
All right. I think this one follows up nicely, and it says there's evidence that such a current surge of the membership and event growth, staff size, etc., that says stay the course. And on the other hand, there's people who feel that PDGA needs to change. Where do you fall on the spectrum, and why?
Well, it should be clearly mentioned that I've always been a huge fan and an outspoken advocate of the PDGA, both the purpose and mission of the organization, the way it's built, and the people that are a part of it, the people that have been running it. I mean, obviously that's a fluctuating thing, but I've got relationships with a lot of the people that are employed by or on the board of directors or affiliated and serving in some capacity with the PDGA, and they're all wonderful people, and they all share the overall interest in the greater good for the sport that you and I do. And I think that the organization and the people that run it get a bad rap a lot of times, and it's the same thing as being a tournament director. It's the vocal minority. You are the face that the fingers get pointed at. But I definitely want to say that the PDGA does a great job. The organization is tremendous, and I don't necessarily think that it needs to change in a fundamental way. I think, as I mentioned, there are minor adjustments and fluctuations that can be implemented that will provide that will improve everybody's experience. And I think a lot of people are quick, especially after you've been involved in this game for a certain number of years. I think a lot of people are quick to not have much bandwidth for feedback and commentary that isn't 100% positive or beaming. I think a lot of us sometimes, after a certain number of years of volunteering, we're really quick to say, oh, whatever, man, shut up and go play, or quit complaining, or you guys are a bunch of crybabies and stuff like that. And while I do think a lot of us, just in general, as humans and as disc golfers and members of the community, could do a better job to maybe think before we speak, especially where social media is concerned, I think that really, we are a loving community, and this is something that we can all come together to figure out what the problem is, or what the problems are, or issues or hiccups are. I think there's a portion of the competition manual, and this is something that's probably going to make me unpopular in the election, but I think there's a portion of the competition manual that is written in a way to allow for something that, in my opinion, shouldn't ever have been allowed, and that is tournament directors playing in their own events. It's not something I've ever done, because I feel like the event suffers because you're distracted by playing. I feel like your play suffers because you're distracted because you're supposed to be running the tournament. But there's also a potential for a glaring conflict of interest there, being that the person that's in charge, that has the authority to manipulate the field, is now in competition with the players on the field. And so there's certain portions of the competition manual that are written to to prevent the tournament director from giving themselves too much of an advantage. And I experienced this at Dynamic Disc Open just this past April. We had a nightmarish lightning delay and just terrible weather, which as happens in Kansas from time to time. And it was just the first round was completely obliterated. I ended up having to make 3 different layouts for Swope Park, and I had to bring some people back the next day to finish 2 holes. And it was and the reason that it had to play out that way, because a similar situation happened to Doug several years back, 2016 or 2017, and he scrapped the first round and told everybody to move on to round 2 as though it were day 1. And obviously you're not allowed to do that. And that would have been, I think, in my situation at Swope Park at DDO this year, it would have been a better service to the players that were there, would have been to just let go of that round. And I understand that one of the reasons the competition manual prevents that from happening is so that in that situation, me, the TD, going in and changing layouts and making those changes and manipulations to the field, I feel like we as TDs should be able to do that, or make more elaborate calls that are kind of not allowed at this point in the interest of player safety and player experience.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, certainly I don't, as a TD myself, I do not envy any of the decisions that had to get made at this year's Dynamic Disc Open, but that's for another day. That could be a whole separate set of interview questions. So I've got a final question for you. It looks like somewhere this final one was a little bit more specific to each of our candidates, and I am looking at the one. And again, I feel like you touched on this a little bit already, but last one is, you mentioned leveraging technology to execute the PDGA's mission. Describe the top program you would initiate to increase technology to further the PDGA's mission and reach. And again, I feel like you touched on that maybe a little. So a final thought or statement on that.
Well, I touched a little bit on this in my statement video, but I think the loss of Steve Hill as media coordinator, that was a huge loss for the PDGA. He was doing some really interesting things. I thought the PDGA radio podcast with him and Sarah Sinclair was amazing. It was an awesome podcast, very informative and entertaining. And that was one of those things that we were actually doing to get a whole bunch of information out in a package that is appealing to people. You have to lace your information with entertainment to get people to really be engaged in this day and age. And now I think that responsibility of media coordination is kind of falling on multiple shoulders. And I really feel that is an area that the PDGA should have a team of skilled and experienced people dedicated solely to media and multimedia and content creation and managing the different platforms. I think that should be definitely much more strategically curated, is how all the different platforms, the website, social media, all these things, podcasts, YouTube, all these things can be used in a coordinated way to release appropriate, pertinent information to the people that need it, and get it out there to where, people aren't coming up to you after you've posted something in the places that you feel are appropriate, and they're still saying they didn't hear, or they didn't know. I feel like, and obviously to a certain extent, you can't cram stuff down people's throats, but I do think that we could be doing a little bit more to cover all of our bases and make sure that information is just out there. Basically you have to be able to stumble across it to really be able to absorb it. People aren't going and looking for accurate information these days, it doesn't seem.
Yeah, you got to get it out there in the right places. Well, Will, I want to thank you, of course, for spending the time to further some of your answers and explanations and the stance that you have on so much as we're trying to push forward in 2021 and beyond. And I just want to say best of luck to you, and thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks, Terry. Let's talk soon.
All right, man. Have a good one. Thanks. And again, good luck.
See you, buddy.
Bye.